Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our seventh webinar in our free 10-part educational series for the year, Bookkeeping Fundamentals and More for 2020 Vision. Today's presentation is all about a TPARty. No, it's not. Caught ya. It's about TPAR reporting. Now, this lady needs no introduction. Sarah Eldridge of Trinity Bookkeeping is an absolute gun when it comes to anything bookkeeping and accounting related, and she's a personal expert. So welcome, Sarah, and tell us all about our TPARty.
Thanks, Joe. TPAR. I know it seems like a tea party, but it's not really that tough. But oh yeah, you got your tea. I didn't bring my cuppa today, but yeah, it's a little tea party that we have after the hustle and bustle of the end of the financial year and getting all of that done. So by the time you've finished all your numbers, you should pretty much by now know what your financials look like and where they're sitting. And your TPAR is a report, an additional report that you give the government. It's the Taxable Payments Annual Report. That's what it stands for, Taxable Payments Annual Report. So you might be wondering, what is this report and who does it apply to?
And so why do we need to do it?
Exactly. Why do I need to do it? So I'm just going to share with you what we're going to talk about today. And that is exactly it. So it deals with contractors. So we're going to talk about, just touch on employee and a contractor, the difference, and taxable payments annual reports, which industry it relates to, how do you do the report, and when do you have to do this report? So that's basically it. We're going to make it short and sweet. We know that time is of the essence these days, and we can really get on with it. So in terms of employee versus contractor, all right, we've spoken about this before, where there are different obligations for when you're an employee versus a contractor. Now, to be classified as a contractor, you have a tool that the ATO has available for you that you can go to the ATO website. Just do employer versus contractor, and it gives you a bunch of questions. And these questions will help you. Things like, where do you get all your income from? So if you're the one who's saying, well, I'm a contractor versus an employee, where do you get all your income from? Technically, you should be working for two or more parties, okay, to be a contractor. And you should get at least less than 70% of your income from one.
Okay. But that's so that 70-30% rule comes into play there.
Yeah, 70-30 comes in there. But that's not the only one. It also has to do with who has the responsibility over the types of jobs, who brings in their tools, things like that. There's a number of questions. So I will urge you guys to go in and take a look at that to see whether you classify as an employee or as a contractor. So as an employee, we know that we have certain rules or awards that we have to follow in terms of wages, super, reporting. And in the past, we've spoken about STP reporting, where we tell the government exactly how much we're paying an employee every month or every fortnight, depending on when your pay cycles are, and report that to the government. Now, we also report the other side, not only what the employees, we are paying the employees, but also what we're paying the contractors.
Yes.
Obviously, Big Brother wants to know who you paid, especially if it's to another person or entity, okay? So it could be your contractors, could be companies, they could be individual sole traders as well. So the government wants to know when you're paying out for a resource, whether a human resource or a company resource, exactly how much you're making these payments for.
Okay. And they would use that as a reconciliation kind of a tool, I expect, so that they can then look at the contractors that are being paid and go, okay, yes, that's correct. That payment was made from that company. So I can see why they would do it. We reconcile our accounts, so the ATO has to.
That's right. And they also want to make sure that things don't slip through the cracks and there's the black money going on. So that's what
Mm.
they're trying to ensure, that really, if you say that you have paid someone, the other person declares that as an income as well. So that's how they make sure that everything's clean and above board. So for example, with an employee, now we've got MyGov, where an
Mhm.
employee can go in and see on a regular basis how much they gotten paid in year-to-date figures from
Mhm.
the employer or the multiple employers they may have. The
Mhm.
government sees how much they've been paid, what the super has been paid. And likewise, when you put in this information, about your contractors, you report that to the government, and also the subcontractors should be reporting that as an income for themselves. So let's say that you are a sole trader and you have a couple of places that you subcontract to. Well, when you go into your MyGov report, that information just flows through, because this is and rightly so, that you have made X amount of dollars from this organization, and then that organization says, yeah, this is how much I've given you. So quite often we have this situation, and I've come across this before, where a person could be either an employee and a subcontractor to another.
Okay.
And they go to their accountant, and it's time for them to do their tax returns, and the accountant tells them not only how much money they've made as contractor, as an employee, but also as a contractor, because all of that information's now in the system.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's definitely when you need a bookkeeper or an accountant to step in and advise you, because I wouldn't know what to do in that instance. So yeah, very interesting.
So that's why we
Okay.
need to do that. And okay, so one thing I forgot to put in there, which we'll talk about, is what happens um,
Uh,
if you don't
Submit
report.
your TPAR.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Note that down, because that goes probably at the end of what we want to discuss.
Mm-hmm. All right. So which entities? Well, it's been increasing. The number of entities and the industries have been
Mm.
increasing. So about 5 years ago or so, it was the construction industry. We were very keen on everyone in the construction industry. There's a lot of subbies in the construction industry. They want to have transparency. But since then, we've had other industries being added on, like the cleaning industry. A lot of people don't realize that if you've got a cleaning company and you're using
Mm.
subcontractors, you should actually be setting up a TPAR report and let the government know that.
Gosh, I wouldn't have known. I knew it was construction, but I wouldn't have known that other industries were involved. So definitely the cleaning industry.
Definitely
What
the
else
cleaning
is
industry.
on?
We've also got the courier industry. How big is
Oh,
it these days?
oh
Especially
my
now
God.
with lockdown, everybody's using couriers, they're subcontracting their work. Well, have they put down all this information? Is that person actually, or that organization actually, a contract? Are you a
Mm,
contractor, or are you an employee? Is that
mm,
person a contractor who you're paying? So if we're
mm.
looking at an individual, for example. All
Okay.
right. So courier and freight,
And
I,
freight as well.
IT
Gosh,
services, sleep.
really? When did that happen?
Yeah,
Wow.
services. Yeah.
Gosh,
You've
I
got an
wouldn't have
IT
expected that
service.
one.
I know. But hey, what if you're outsourcing?
Well, this is true. And so many people do.
Well, if you outsource and you outsource overseas, it's a different situation. But if you're outsourcing and having subcontractors within Australia, you've got to record as well.
Okay.
And lastly, the security industry and the surveillance. So,
So they're under the microscope at the moment
well,
in more ways than one.
yeah. So those ones are the main. Well, those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 industries that are targeted.
For
And
2020. It could change for 2021. So
That's right.
make sure that if you aren't reporting this year, make sure you double check for next year.
They didn't understand it. Bixby didn't understand.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry about that, Joe.
I love when Bixby or Siri or, if I say, hey, Google right now, it will probably ding at me.
Look, sometimes I don't even talk to it and it talks back.
Modern technology. Gotta love it. Yes. Okay, so next year, make sure that you double check that your industry is not included or it is included, because I'm sure they'll just keep adding to it. And I'm sure that, in coming years, everybody will eventually have to be reporting this. I know in the BPO industry, so that's the business process outsourcing industry, it's not required yet. And I know this because I checked the other day, only because it's due tomorrow and, I didn't want to do the wrong thing and not put it in. But one of my clients is in the construction industry, so I'd already done that one, and that's why I knew about it. But if you don't know about these things and you don't know where to look or what to look for, then you're going to miss out and you potentially get fined for not putting in these reports. Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about what happens if you don't put in the report later on in this. Sorry, over to you, Sarah. I just took over.
No, go ahead. It's about both of us talking about our experiences and how we're dealing with it as small business owners and what we've come across and how to mitigate really our risks as well. And so what is it that I need to report? You want to know, you want to collect from your contractor the name, the address, their ABN number, and whether they're registered for GST or not. So it's better to do this before you take them on as a contractor right away. Right. And you know that if you have not been given an ABN number, you have to hold back 48.5% of whatever you're going to or should be paying them. So if an invoice comes through, you've got to hold back if they haven't given you an ABN number.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Now, a lot of people, when they put their subcontractors into their system, do an ABN lookup if they haven't been given it. Mm-hmm. But if you can't find it, because sometimes it's hidden under different names, it might not be the trading name or what have you, you actually have to ask these questions because, as you say, 48% withholding in tax is a lot of money. That's half of the bill you don't have to pay, but you will have to pay it to the ATO.
That's right.
So you'll get caught out one way or another. So it's easier just to grab their ABN from them.
Yeah. And, some people will get that information and some companies might, but sometimes we're all in a rush and we're like, all right, can you come and work for me and can you do this? And especially in the construction industry when you need someone and if you don't take those details from them, then you're going to be penalized later. And also, if you've noticed in your BAS return that you send out every quarter, if you're on a quarterly BAS, and monthly, if you're on a monthly, it has a space there for those that's held back because no ABN supplied. There's actually a space there for you to do that because they're expecting you to hold that money back and report that you've held that much back because a company hasn't or an individual hasn't provided you with an ABN number.
Exactly. And this goes back to the cash flow discussion we had probably at the beginning of our webinar series. If you haven't held back that 48%, but that you don't have their ABN, you are required to pay that money. So if you don't have that money in your cash flow, then you're in trouble. You're going to have to go to the bank and say, hey, I need an overdraft or I need a loan or whatever. You have to work out how you're going to pay the tax office this money. It's owed by somebody and someone has to pay it.
Yep. And exactly. The company is responsible. So it's up to you to go looking for that ABN and also identify whether there's GST or there's no GST because you will have to either report that GST as being paid to that entity. And at the end of the financial year, when you have your profit and loss, if you put in the total amount you've actually paid out as an amount within your expenses, but you don't have an ABN, you cannot report this as an ABN, then the penalty is that you cannot even claim it as a legitimate business expense.
And then you can't claim back the GST on it.
No, not only that, but you can't claim it. You could have paid $5,000 to a subcontractor to do a work. You don't have the ABN, you don't have all the details, and quite often, especially in the construction industry, you might not even know where that person's gone to after, because you don't have anything. So if you don't have the tax file number, their ABN number, and you haven't done your due diligence to start with, you could be penalized. And that's what I was going to talk about. What happens when you don't have this information? You can't use it as a legitimate business expense. And
correct.
And so those are the things to just watch out for and why it's important. So when is it due? And like you said, Joe, it's due tomorrow.
The 28th of August every year.
Yeah, every year.
On your calendar.
That's right. Or your bookkeeper
can do it earlier, can't you?
Yeah, you can do it as soon as you finish your financials for the year. Just put it in. Just have it done.
Get it out of the way.
Easy peasy. And hey, depending on the type of software you're using, it's super easy. Xero especially makes it super easy. And I am a small business that has I do bookkeeping for entities with QuickBooks or MYOB or Xero, but more and more I'm beginning to realize that a super easy to report software, which is all linked to the ATO, is so very important. And if you can get that information and send it through immediately, rather than take it out, put it into a different document and send it off on a different portal or on a different another process. So what you're doing is you're taking the same info and you're double handling. You don't want to be double handling. And even though sometimes people come to me and say, well, Xero does cost a little bit more. Yes, it does. It costs a little bit more than QuickBooks, but things like this will make it super easy for you. And it'll just, how
much is your time worth? That's the ultimate question.
Yeah.
And it costs you so much more to spend the time to download the report in the appropriate file format, find where you've got to upload it, hope that it works, because sometimes these things time out if it's a big file. And it could take you up to an hour sometimes to do this. If you've got it all in one system that you press a button and it automatically sends it through to the ATO, then you're saving yourself an hour's worth of time. And for a tradie, that can be like $125 an hour or more. Yeah.
Right. And obviously, your accountant or your bookkeeper who has access should be able to already be linked up with the ATO and through the reporting, and as a small business, you allow them to report on your behalf. They can do that for you and make sure that everything's up to date. Now, I can tell you that a couple of years ago, I had to do this for a small business in the construction industry, and we had to do a couple of years worth of TPAR reporting.
Goodness.
Years, and it was on paper. So I had to call in, ask for the paper forms to be sent out to me, and then go out and in triplicate fill them all out. How tedious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for technological advancements, I say.
That's it. So so that's the
that's TPAR.
That's TPAR for you. Now, let's just see. What did we say we were going to be looking at? Which industries? We covered that. how do you report? You report it either through your software or you report it through your BAS agent, your tax accountant. They can do that for you. And when do you report it? On the 28th of August. What happens if you don't? You're liable.
Is there any fines if you're late in putting your report in?
You know what? I think the ATO gives so much leeway and so
so if you do miss out tomorrow, don't stress, do it over the weekend.
Yeah, just do it over the weekend. I mean, it's advisable to do it when it's due. Remember, like super, it's about self-reporting and being transparent and open
And
accountable. If you can't, let your tax agent know. And what we'll do is we can even put in, send a letter to say, you're going to be late doing this. Yeah. Please, can we have a couple of, and just go out in the front foot, go out there and say, this is what,
proactive.
Be proactive and say, look, I can't get this thing done because of such and such. Could I have a little bit of grace? And you pretty much you'll be okay. But what is important is that ABN's really that for sure. You need that. Okay.
That's the key information. If you're not going to collect anything else, because you can do a web search and find an address and what have you, the key information is the ABN. That's really fundamentally with a TPAR report. That's what you're obliged to collect.
Yeah.
You have to collect that number.
Yeah. Get your and also really hand in hand with that, know that this is a legitimate contractor, that they're not your employee. Really.
That's it. And they're not some dodgy person that you've accidentally engaged in work with, who's going to disappear tomorrow. And I think that's all about minimizing your risk as well as a business. You don't want to be engaging with dodgy contractors that are fly by the night and leave you high and dry and might not be qualified to do the work that you've engaged them to do. So by getting their ABN number, you are reducing your risk as a business, but also ensuring that they're a legitimate business themselves.
And when you do your due diligence, like your insurance, and make sure that you're covered, you have to report and let them know that you've got X number of employees or you've got contractors doing such and such. You want to be transparent, because if anything does come about and you are then held liable, you don't want the insurance company to then turn around and say, well, we didn't know that. You should have told us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's TPAR reporting in a nutshell. And that's it for August. Coming up in September, we've got some really good information to share with you, but we'll keep it a secret for now. Thank you for joining us. And the wonderful Sarah, thank you so much again for your insight and your knowledge. It's just a joy working with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. And do send messages to me and let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like me to talk about, and we can include that in our next session. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.